You may have heard of the Big Mac Index. It uses the price of a Big Mac to measure purchasing power parity between countries. It was created by the Economist in 1986 as a way to compare how far your money goes in different parts of the world. A Big Mac costs about $8.17 in Switzerland, $5.69 in the US, and $2.75 in Egypt. Now, can we apply this concept to other more expensive consumer products like mobile phones? In some ways, yes. Just like the Big Mac Index highlights currency overvaluation or undervaluation, what we'll call the iPhone Index can reveal a country's purchasing power when it comes to essential electronic goods. While a Big Mac is an everyday item, an iPhone represents a premium product, subject to higher tariffs, taxes, and global market forces. These factors distort prices far more than they would for a simple burger, making the iPhone, to me, a bit more of an intriguing metric for an economic comparison. So this raises the question, why are iPhones more expensive in some countries than in others? Let's get into it. Let's start with Turkey, the world's most expensive market for Apple products. As of their recent price hike, the iPhone 15 Pro Max with 1 terabit of storage is selling for 107,999 Turkish lira, which is about 3,400 bucks. The same phone is priced at $15.99 in the United States. And the culprit here, guys, isn't Apple inflating the prices, but it's actually Turkey's tax system and the economic conditions there. Turkey imposes extraordinarily high taxes on consumer electronics, particularly luxury items like smartphones. And when you combine this with Turkey's inflation and the currency devaluation in recent years, it's easy to see why the price is so high. Now, what if I told you Turkey earns more from every iPhone sold than Apple does? The Turkish government, through its various taxes, takes a larger share of the price than Apple itself. And the sad part, Turkey's minimum wage earners would have to save every lira they earn for more than 6 months to afford the latest iPhone. Next on our list is Brazil, where the iPhone 15 Pro Max costs nearly $2,800. And why? Brazil is actually known for its high import tariffs. The government imposes steep duties on imported goods, especially electronics, in an effort to protect local industries. And even though the country does manufacture some Apple products domestically, even locally produced iPhones are still subject to these high taxes. Like in Turkey, currency exchange rates also play a major role. The Brazilian real has been volatile, and when a country's currency weakens against the US dollar, imported goods like iPhones become disproportionately expensive. In India, for example, you'll be paying over $2,400 for the same iPhone. India imposes significant import duties on electronic goods to encourage local manufacturing under its Made in India initiative. Imported iPhones incur duties around 15%, which directly increases the retail price. And although some iPhones are produced in India, some models are not, which makes it much more difficult for Apple to bypass these import duties. And on top of that, there are goods and services taxes which are imposed on these products, which have an additional 18% tax on smartphones. In Hungary, it's priced at $2,200, and the reasons are very similar: high VAT or value added tax, and currency volatility. The situation in Hungary is largely driven by the 27% value added tax, which is actually one of the highest in the world. And in other European countries like the Czech Republic and Finland, you're going to be looking to pay around $2,000 for this phone. And I wanted to use this opportunity to talk about value-added taxes. I went to Spain for the first time last summer and didn't realize how hard I was hit by them. At a Foot Locker in Marbella, I bought a pair of Air Force Ones and a pair of Air Max 90s. And then when I got back to my Airbnb, I realized that I had paid $50 more for the shoes than I would have in the United States. And all of that extra money went towards value-added taxes. Spain's value-added tax rate is 21%, and compare that to the 8% sales tax where I'm from. Americans hate taxes, and as an American, I had to look into why consumers here were being charged for basic goods like Air Forces, which I pretty much buy on a quarterly basis like a Wall Street Journal subscription. Anyways, I read that the European Union requires member states to maintain a minimum VAT rate to avoid cross-border competition and to ensure some level of consistency within the single market. This requirement often leads to higher value-added tax rates overall. Look, value-added tax is definitely an efficient way for governments to collect revenue. And since it's a consumption tax applied at each production and distribution stage, creates quite a steady income stream, which is essential for funding public services like healthcare, education, and infrastructure. Spain in particular has a value-added tax rate of 21%, but reduced rates of 10% and 4% apply to essential goods and services. The 10% rate covers items like food products and certain medical services, while the 4% rate applies to basic essentials such as bread, milk, fruit, books, and medications. These lower rates ease the financial burden on consumers for essential goods and creates an indirect incentive for consumers to focus their spending on these items instead of splurging on a new iPhone every year. So why is it that the United States remains one of the cheapest places to buy an iPhone? Well, for starters, Apple is an American company. meaning no import duties. And the only tax you'll see is your local sales tax, which varies by state but tends to be lower than the VAT you see in Europe. There are a few reasons why Americans don't pay high value-added taxes. One of the reasons the United States even exists is because of a British-imposed tax on tea, sugar, and stamps. So imagine what would happen if the government would charge a 25% tax on top of your Ford F-150. Now, speaking of Ford F-150s, Americans love to buy things. The US has a consumer-driven economy where consumer spending makes up about 70% of GDP. Compare that to about 50 to 55% in the European Union. Lower taxes on consumer goods encourage spending, which stimulates demand, drives business revenues, and promotes job growth. And on top of that, import duties in the United States are generally lower in the country to keep prices low, competition higher, and promote the cycle of consumption that is central to its economic model. The taxes on imported goods are usually under 3%. An American at the Mercedes dealership can expect to pay 2.5% in import duties on their new car, while a German at a Ford dealership can expect to pay a 10% import duty on their new car. My whole point is that outside of the United States, one can expect the government to collect a little more money from the purchases they make, which in turn generally makes buying consumer goods a little more expensive. So what can we learn by comparing the price of an iPhone across countries, much like we do with the Big Mac index? Both indexes give us insight into the country's purchasing power, but they do it in different ways. While the Big Mac index uses a mass market item to measure the relative strength of currencies, the iPhone index highlights how luxury items are taxed, regulated, and priced around the world. Surprised if you made it this far, because my voice is pretty boring, but I do appreciate you tuning in the whole time, and I hope you learned a couple of things as well. Leave your thoughts down below and start the discussion. If you want to see some more economics and finance videos, we're going to be churning out some more content on a regular basis. So stay tuned, this is Corp Dorks, and we'll see you around next time.